Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Framing Leadership. I have one of my good friends on the line. His name is Lance Garvin. Lance works for a company that helps you find your mojo. And if you look up Lance on LinkedIn, he is the broker of happiness, people. And I would agree with that sentiment. Lance, welcome to Framing Leadership.
Hey, thanks, Todd. It's an honor to be here. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, man. Well, I know you are a broker of happiness, but you are also are a broker of helping people find their motivators and what motivates them. And I remember I met you, man, it had to be 2017. Everybody, I was walking through O'Hare Airport, and I read Daniel Pink's book Drive probably a couple of years before that. And I saw this little book sitting there, on those business things. I'm like, you know what, new business book, I'll take a look at it. Especially this one hit me. What motivates me? I'm like, what is that all about? Is it about intrinsic motivation? And then as I read it and I took the assessment that was available within the book and got that back, I bought my team a copy of it. And then we started this path of, kind of figuring out how do we use motivators. People use DISC, right? They use situational leadership, inside out growth coaching, all sorts of other assessments. But this was a unique one for me, because it really, an EQ, I think, is really, and this was built with the help of Travis Bradbury and his folks at EQ 2.0. But that book just struck me as, how do people find what motivates them in a time when there's a lot of stuff going on in our world that people question, how do they live their life and what's important to them? This little assessment, which fascinated me, I think really helped drive a different look within our leadership development and coaching program. People love the assessment. They love to understand what motivates them. And then we continue to try to take it to new levels, Lance, within our organization. But, first, welcome again. But how's the work going with what motivates me? What was the impetus behind the book and the assessment on what motivates me?
Yeah, I appreciate it. And again, it's an honor to be here. I love your podcast. I think you do great work. We've known each other for a long time, and man, your friendship is one of my number one motivators.
It is. It's your number one motivator.
Yeah. And so, you know what? Our relationship means the world to me. So thanks for that. And man, I'm glad we came across each other. Glad you came across our book in the airport. But yeah, to answer your question, we there are a lot of different tools out there, like you say, and they measure different things out there. We work in conjunction largely with a couple of very common types of motivators. Personality assessments. Great to know who we are. Am I still on here? Sorry about that.
You're good, man. You're
okay. Good. It's great to know who we are, how we interact with each other, other types of personalities, that type of thing. But once you take your some type of personality assessment, our personalities are baked by the time we're pretty young. And so there's really only a need to take it once. And we know that information. And again, it's really good to know that. Strengths, similarly, it's really important to know what we're good at, what we do well, what skills we bring to the table. But we could be really good at something and not necessarily enjoy it or potentially even hate it. And the interesting thing is it's not your underperformers that you have to worry about leaving your organization, right? They'll stay with you as long as you let them.
Yeah.
It's your good ones. Those are the ones that leave. And they don't leave because they're not good at what they do. They leave because they're not engaged. They're not enjoying what it is that they're currently doing. And so that was the impetus behind what we do is, well, what actually gets people out of bed in the morning? What drives them? What gets them excited about the work that they're doing? And how do you get them more of that in their lives? And so that's why we came up with the Motivators assessment. That's why the book was written. And it was based on the largest study of its kind in conjunction with Willis Towers Watson. And there were over 850,000 people interviewed to really get an idea of what drives people. So that's where it all came from, right there.
Yeah, well, it's an awesome book. It's an awesome assessment. So in our leadership program, we've used it both at Behringer and then at Biohaven prior to the Pfizer transition. We used it to help teams and leaders understand, right, that, as you said, people understand strengths from strength finders. They understand their personality, the way they communicate or like to be communicated to. But that motivation is an interesting one. And I think the one thing that we loved about the Motivators assessment was, one, people are always fascinated about themselves, right? And then who you work with and
Always.
what motivates you. Like learning is my number one motivator. It's my top, and my, it might be surprising. We'll talk a little bit about that, but so learning is my top motivator. I love to learn. I'm very curious. That's why I started this podcast to talk to people like you and other people, because I can pick their brains, and I just get to learn about them. So it's fascinating to me. But the thing we wanted to use the motivators for is, how do we help people? We know that employee engagement drives performance. How do we use something like motivators assessment to job sculpt? And I'd love you to talk a little bit about how motivators helps individuals and teams sculpt jobs. Like, we can't build the perfect job, right? There, to your point,
Right.
there are just things that we're going to do that don't really motivate us. We have to do them, and we could be pretty good at them, like expense reporting. I'm good at it. I can do it pretty well. I don't like to do it. It bores me to
Yuck,
death,
right?
right? It's definitely not one of the things I love to do, but kind of walk people through how the motivators assessment helps leaders, teams, and individuals kind of frame up what motivates them and how they use it to job sculpt, understanding that we're not going to build the perfect job, but the better we can get closer to finding the things that motivate us, then our lives, both at work and at home, are better.
Yeah. No, that's a great point you bring up, because we can be good at something and not necessarily enjoy it. I mean, you talk about expense reports, that bores me to tears. I avoid that as long as possible. In fact, I oftentimes get somebody else to do it for me.
Yeah.
But understanding what gets us excited and infusing just even a little bit of that in what we do, like you said, the term job sculpting makes a world of difference. It's a big lever. It's a big leverage point that, it puts a little spring in our step, and we start to tap into that discretionary effort when we're doing things that we enjoy doing. Being able to infuse some of that too will keep people longer, right? As long as the compensation package is where it needs to be, which we don't have anything to do with that
Right.
with
Yeah.
FindMojo, but organizations usually have that within the ballpark, right? Then it becomes, well, let's give them more of the things that get them excited and have them stay longer and be more enthusiastic about the work that they're doing. So it's a easy thing to do and a low cost thing to do to really get a lot of mileage out of the engagement of your people.
Yeah, I love the fact that you brought up FindMojo, because that's really the larger umbrella of what motivates me, kind of the bigger program that you guys utilize with helping companies find and individuals within those organizations find their mojo, find their motivators, but also build energy within the organization, drive employee engagement. I mean, that's a huge separator. I go back to one of the books I love. It's probably on my shoulder right above me over here, The Advantage by Patrick Lencioni. And it talks about smart versus healthy organizations, right? There's so many companies that are very smart at what they do. They're good at marketing, and they're good at analytics, and they're good at, all the things from a processing standpoint that are very smart that companies do really well. But the ones that have the advantage are the ones that are healthier, right? They have great cultures where people thrive. And I think part of it is, to your point, understanding strengths, understanding personality, but really tapping in to what motivates people within their organization. Talk to me about the bigger umbrella of FindMojo. What is you and your partners there are hoping to enhance from a culture standpoint, from an organization and team structure standpoint with FindMojo?
Yeah, well, I appreciate that question. And you mentioned earlier, in my LinkedIn profile says broker of happiness, right?
Yes,
So
absolutely.
there's a study out there that shows that people who are happy in work are 150% more likely to be happy in life overall. And
Yeah.
right now, there's a deficit of happiness,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of anxiety and stress, and this plays a big part in helping solve that, right? The more that we are doing things that we enjoy doing, the less room there is for those things that bring us down and that don't make us happy. The more we're engaged in things that are exciting to us and enjoyable, the less space there is and the less likelihood of being disappointed in life and things like that. And so that's super important. Also, I don't think, quite frankly, I don't think we've ever been a lazier people overall. Over the last few years, it's been easy to be lazy and to
Yeah.
become disengaged and not put in your full effort. And rightfully so. It's been a difficult time for a
It
lot
has
of
been.
people.
Yeah.
You and I have talked about a number of situations that have been pretty just devastating, and man, it just breaks my heart to hear that. But one of the things that we learned, and we learned so many of the things from our clients, from our power users like Beringer and Bauhaven, of cool applications for the assessment. One of the things that organizations would do over the pandemic was they would break out their team report that would show everybody's motivators on the team. And for example, if somebody had fun or friendship, let's say friendship is one of their top motivators, they would make sure that people were hearing from their teammates more, getting more phone calls, getting, more texts and things like that, checking in on them, just because we weren't able to do a drop by in the office or see each other at the, in the break room or anything like that. So just understanding these items for people has been very remarkable and impactful for helping people kind of pull out of that funk that a lot of people have been in.
Yeah. So I know you guys work with a lot of organizations. Yes, you worked with us at Behringer, you worked with us at Biohaven. I know you've worked with some other companies. And so from a feedback perspective, how is the motivators, any data around how the motivators assessment have helped drive engagement? I know you've got some great stories on LinkedIn about what it's done and how people have tapped into motivators, but anything that you walk away and you go to bed at night going, man, that is a pretty awesome story. And that's a pretty cool impact that FindMojo and this assessment has had on people.
Yeah. We've had countless engagement survey scores go up just from this one aspect. It gets named all the time because a lot of things don't change in the organization, right? Or they might bring in flavor of the month or something along those lines. But what happens is, you understand what motivates people, what gets them excited about the work that they're doing, and you give people more of that. They're more excited to show up. They get there earlier. They stay later. They do more work. They skip lunches.
Yeah.
And so all those different aspects can really improve the engagement scores of people. We've seen countless examples of that over the last year and a half.
So one of the things that's always fascinated people about the motivators assessment, I remember we spent countless hours at any company I've ever been at trying to drive incentive compensation plans. And so then we had, I think, over 1,700 people at Behringer take the motivators assessment. I mean, that pretty much the whole commercial organization. In fact, with some of the MSLs and some of our medical team as well. And it was always fascinating to see that somewhere around 85-90% of people, Lance, who took that assessment had money in their bottom 3 motivators. So there's just for everybody's information, there's 23 motivators, and you can go to FindMojo, or you can follow Lance on LinkedIn under FindMojo or Find the Broker of Happiness. But there's 23 different motivators that this group of psychologists and sociologists put together to develop this very extensive and very in-depth assessment. But so one of the motivators, money is a motivator, right? Everybody looks at money. So we've been in sales. I've been in sales since I was 16 years old. It's fascinating. And you get people look at you with they turn their head slightly when they see money as their bottom motivator. Can you talk a little bit about that and what that actually means? That some people get well, I'm in sales. I should have money somewhere in my top 7. I mean, it could be somewhat of a motivator, but kind of walk through that and what that means.
Yeah, it's so funny you bring that up because I had that exact same experience. I've been in sales my entire career as well. And when I first took this assessment 9 years ago, I thought, man, money's going to show up as a top motivator for me. I was being interviewed to be the head of sales for the organization. And I thought money's going to show up as a top motivator, but I swear I don't do it for the money. I'm not that guy, but I'm a sales guy. So it's got to be that. And I kind of went around in that circle in my head for about 30 seconds. Thought, well, let's take it and see what it is. So I take the assessment and it comes back that money is number 22 out of 23 for me. And I was like, yes, I knew it. And then I thought, oh man, these guys are not going to want to hire me. I'm a sales guy and I'm not driven by money.
Right.
Well, we ended up having an amazing conversation, me and the 2 original co-founders. And we talked about how some of the other motivators were tops for me, like family and friendship, and challenge was another one. And why I want to provide a good living for my family. It's not about the money, but it's about the opportunity and providing and the protection and things like that. It's about the relationships that I have, like with you, right? You're not just somebody that I've worked with. You're a dear friend. and we've been to each other's homes, and we've done some cool things
Yeah,
together over the years.
absolutely. Yeah.
So, those things are the things that drive me. The money takes care of itself for me. And so
Yeah.
it's similar to a lot of people. The number one motivator for salespeople, the top one is impact, followed
Right.
closely by family for salespeople. They're in the mid 30% for everybody. And money is a motivator for people overall is uh, in the 10% of people. For salespeople, it's 17%. So you got 83% of salespeople who don't even have money as a top motivator. So it's about other things for
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely. Absolutely. Um, so, you brought up impact in family, and I think that's absolutely important. It's interesting as people look at their motivators. Lance, I'm going to go back to so we're both together. Is when we look at the assessment. That's why we love to use it. It provides people insights into what wakes them up in the morning, and then as they get greater insights on as to yeah, I mean, if you guys used to always say to us, and we're certified to train on, on the motivators and
Right.
FindMojo, which if anybody wants to tap into that, reach out to Framework Leaders. We love this. We love this assessment. We love this program. But the one thing that we always said is that, if you didn't feel like you were being satisfied from a compensation standpoint, then money would start to rise somewhere. But if you feel like you're fairly compensated, right? And you're fairly like praise, recognition, and money are my bottom three.
Yeah.
Like, wow, Todd, you don't like to be recognized, you don't like to be praised, and you don't like money, bro. You're kind of easy to hang out with. That's pretty easy. You're kind of a simple dude. But
Yeah.
I get my satisfaction from, to your point, from impact, from learning, from my family, from making, from other people. But if nobody ever recognized me, if nobody ever provided praise to me, like it was a vacuum or nobody ever, if I didn't feel like I was fairly compensated, then to your point, those things tend to slide up a little bit more. It's when they're satisfied and you're doing the things that motivate you on a consistent basis, where the world is right and you're living kind of your job sculpt your best roles, that things tend to fall into place.
Yeah.
So Lance, one thing about the book and the assessment is there's, as I said to people before, there's 23 individual motivators, right? And your top 7 are the things that kind of wake you up and get you going in the morning.
Right.
And then they're listed. I think there's middle, and then there's the bottom 3 that you usually have. And then there's 5 identities. Kind of walk people through the motivators part of it, and then the 5 identities, if you could.
Yeah. Happy to. So the motivators, when everything was said and done, and it was a 2-year process in addition to that 10-year study with 850,000 people initially, it was a 2-year process to kind of take all that information back and boil it down to what were the common motivators between everybody. And when everything was said and done, there were 23 that stood out far and above everything else.
Yeah.
And it was like you mentioned earlier, some very smart people, psychometricians, psychologists, people way smarter than I am that figured this out. But
people who understand math.
That's right. Nobody told me math would be involved today. So
exactly.
So there are 23 of them, everything from autonomy to friendship to money to teamwork, and a number of others totaling 23.
Praise, recognition, right?
Yeah, that's right. And they're all common amongst us. And there's some things that motivate us more than other things. The first 7, like you mentioned, those are your strong. The next 7 we classify as moderate, and the last 9 are your neutral. And they're all positive concepts. You'll notice that fear isn't one of them in there because that's not a positive concept. These are all positive things that drive us. And so what we've done is we've actually clustered those 23 motivators into what we call identities. Yeah. So into 5 identities. So caregivers, achievers, thinkers, are some of those. And you can see, when you go through the assessment, you get a 40+ page report that digs deep into, what these motivators are and what our primary identities are, which we're a blend, by the way, as well. Yeah. We're not just a caregiver or just a thinker, but we're definitely a blend of those, and it shows in our motivators. But yeah, it makes it really easy to use, and we're able to do some really amazing things with teams, also based on the motivators as well as the identities.
Yeah. It was. I did a motivators FindMojo workshop for an intact leadership team not long ago, and I remember the director. So we were looking at, we went through the report and we went through the presentation, the discussion, but we got to the identities. And his number one identity was caretaker. And he was a business guy, right? And he's like, caretaker. Like, what is, how can I be a caretaker? But when you list, because you got the report does a really nice job of listing out some of the verbiages that went along with it.
Yeah.
And his team, I said, ask your team if you're a caretaker. Hit on the descriptions of what a caretaker is, and let's see if they see that within you. And he started listing out some of the things. They're like, yeah, you definitely provide for us. You take care of us. You give us the information, we need to do the job well. And as he described, he just couldn't, I'm a business dude. I'm a regional director, Lance. I can't be a caretaker. I gotta be a results guy, But it was funny to have that discussion and kind of dig deep. It kind of aligns, and I've seen more leaders with caretakers. One of their identities, I know it's definitely one of my top three identities is being a caretaker. But it's part of that servant mindset, right? That transformational mindset you have is that, you're trying to help these people to achieve and to have a culture where they can achieve and they can build a team environment where people thrive together. They share ideas, they challenge each other appropriately, right? They learn together. So for the sales leaders out there or any leaders out there, being a caretaker is not a bad thing, but to Lance's earlier discussion is we're a blend of all these 5 identities and we're a blend of all of these 23 motivators. And I think that's the fascinating thing as you share your team assessment with everybody and you have that discussion as a team, you start getting closer and closer, building stronger relationships from an emotional intelligence standpoint, from a psychological safety standpoint, from an employee engagement standpoint, from a team dynamics standpoint. That's not a bad thing. That's a really, really good thing. And as you were saying, in this environment where people are searching for meaning and purpose, right? I really feel, I said this to my kids who both just graduated from college. One just actually got out of the Navy after an 8-year career or 9-year career in the Navy. Is use this assessment, figure out what motivates you. Then when you understand what motivates you, you can start to job scope and look for roles that fit that motivation. And when you're happier, it's not about the money initially. It's like, the book Mastery by Robert Greene is one of my favorite books, but he always talks about find what you love to do, right? And understand and try to master that. Yeah. And understand that the more you master it, the more you learn, the more you have this discovery mindset about who you are and what you love to do, the money will take care of itself at the end if you understand, how you measure your life, as Clayton Christensen once wrote in your book. So, yeah, that's what I really love about the, FindMojo, the ability to help companies and people find their energy, and then the assessment. I know you've taken it. I know your team has taken it. Anything else that you want leaders or people to understand about the motivators assessment? Do you see an age difference in people who take the motivators assessment?
Oh yeah. You know what? That's something that gets brought up all the time. Understanding generations, right?
Yeah.
And you can even think of it in this way too. At the beginning of your career, there are probably things that were more exciting or motivating to you now than they are right now. Then than they are right now, and vice versa. And there are things that have probably remained the same over those years too. I know you've taken the assessment. You took the assessment, several years ago, so you didn't necessarily have it at the beginning of your career. Right. But you can see those things over time as you look back as well. Recognition tends to be a bigger one for people earlier on because they're trying to understand or they're trying to establish that street cred, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
To be, respected and known and things like that. And right now, you and I, in our stage of our careers, we're like, we want people to respect us, but it's not the number one thing or it's not a top motivator for us.
Right.
They're the things that are more driving for us.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, and you know what? It's great I love that you had your kids take this as well, because I would have loved to have had something like this when I left college. I remember taking something that said that I should be a home healthcare involved in home healthcare somehow, because it was, and I was.
Well, you're such a nice guy. I'm sure people would love to have Lance Garvin come to their home, but yeah.
I'm sure they would maybe, but I wouldn't like that at all. So in fact, it was funny because, my grandpa, my mom's dad, was actually living with us at the time, and he was incapacitated. And I spent a decent amount of time helping him. And I remember, I mean, I loved him dearly, big influence on my life, but I did not enjoy that aspect of what we had to do to help him. So when those results came back, I was like, what in the world is that? But,
That's interesting. I think the one thing too about the identities that was really helpful for me is understanding I'm a builder, I'm a caretaker, right? I am a builder. I love to build things, right? Whether was at Behringer building out their leadership development program and other programs there. But just that, I love building. I know that really gives me a ton of energy, Lance. So I think when people not only take the motivators assessment, get those identities, and that report is pretty comprehensive. I think most of the times people look at that and go, yeah, that's absolutely me. And then once I felt like I'm a builder, that's what I love to do. And it's not shocking that as time went on in the role at Behringer, I knew it was time for somebody else to be a builder. And luckily I had, a lot of really good people who could have taken my role. And I think they all had similar mindsets of changing up the program and building putting their own stamp on that. And then I got the opportunity to go to Biohaven and then start to help build that until, we were purchased by Pfizer. But now I'm trying to build a leadership development program with my partner, Rich Barron. And so that's kind of what I love to do. I love to build, I love to create, but I think part of the caretaker thing that was also an identity of mine is I love to teach and I love to help people become the best leaders and coaches and managers they can possibly be. And one of the programs that I think is essential to that is this one, because I think if you don't understand what motivates you, then it's really difficult to sculpt the career and life that you want to have.
Yeah. You bring up a couple really good points there too. One of them is that, a lot of, you think about the leaders in your career. I think about the leaders in my career and how were they? Did they have empathy, for example? Back to your earlier example, empathy is one of the motivators for a caregiver, right? And so the people who were instrumental leaders in your career, I can almost guarantee you that they had a level of empathy and something that drew you to them that you loved. And that's a big piece of leadership and servant leadership, like you say.
Absolutely.
The other thing that you bring up too is that, we thrive when we are not only good at something, but we also enjoy it. We love it, right? What we're good at and what gets us excited, man, you pair those together, it's unstoppable. It's amazing the trajectory that goes from, just kind of linear to exponential. And we love to see it. That's actually what gets us out of bed in the morning. We're all caregivers as, our top one or two identity, me and my partners. And we love to see people progress and get excited about what they're doing and find new lifeblood in the work that they do. So I love that you brought that up.
Yeah, I think you mentioned some things from a leadership standpoint, and that's why I love this assessment too and report as a leader. We talked about, of course, strength finders and DISC, right? But what motivates me, again, you're just kind of peeling back that onion a little bit. And the better I know my people, the better I can understand, how I communicate with them and their personality style from a communication standpoint, which is DISC. I understand their strengths and opportunities. But when you understand their motivators, right, and your team's motivators, right, you can hopefully develop a culture within that team that brings those things out. I remember distinctly, I had somebody on my team who was an incredible achiever, like one of the best people I've ever had on my team. And I could tell that her mojo was somewhat flat, right? And I think I cross-mojonated her was what I did. And, I remember looking at, the assessment was a little new to me, but then I looked at her assessment because we had a team report and I'll share that with everybody on this later, but I had a team report that I made up, and I remember, and it was hanging up on my wall. And I remember looking at it and going, oh man, I haven't incorporated her in building things. I haven't asked her questions and her input on things. She's just been, what we said, doing a lot of basement work, just digging stuff out, getting things completed. But we weren't really, thinking things through strategically. We weren't having those discussions until I started. And I said, hey, can you help me here? And can you help me here? It automatically started her, her energy rose and her mojo increased. And so that is having that team assessment, understanding my team's motivators, enabled me to tap into that. If I didn't have that, I know we communicated really well together, but not having that, that motivators assessment report right there in front of me, sitting on my table, and everybody had on their team, we could start to pinpoint areas where we were losing our mojo. But when we found it back, and you're not always going to be perfect, as you said, Lance, leadership and coaching and management, that's hard to do it. You think about strength finders and DISC and motivators assessment and situational leadership, all the things that you have to think about of being a good leader and being a good servant leader. That's a lot there, but these things help you kind of tap into those things. And the better you use, I think, an assessment like what motivates me, the more energy, the more engagement, the more fun, and the more innovative your culture is going to be.
Yeah, 100%, Todd. I couldn't agree more with you. And yeah, it's just, we kind of liken it to the old BASF commercials. You remember those? We don't make X, but we make X better. Right? We don't make this, but we make this better. And that's what this really does. We're, we don't solve all the problems, but we can help a lot of them get fixed a lot easier.
Yeah.
So that's really what we do.
Well, everybody, I've had Lance Garvin here from FindMojo. He is the broker of happiness on LinkedIn. So, as I said, framework leader, we do the Mojo assessment. We do the motivators assessment along with the FindMojo program. Lance, you can reach out to him on LinkedIn. I would definitely highly suggest you follow him. He is also, he's not just the broker of happiness. He is the broker of one of the finest putter grips in the industry. Now, this is one of my putters that has one of Sweet Roll's amazing putter grips on it. Now, I have one that's a Margaritaville one as well, Lance. And I tell you, you cannot be anxious over a 5-foot putt with a Margaritaville putter grip.
You can't.
I don't think Jimmy Buffett would allow it. But
no, he would not.
It's just a lot more chilly when you have a Sweet Rolls putter grip that's Margaritaville in your hands. There's just no anxiety, right? You can make those 5-footers. There are no yips anymore. If there are, I just drink a margarita and they're gone. You know what I mean?
It's 5 o'clock somewhere when you're putting.
Exactly. So check out Sweet Rolls.
I love it.
Check out FindMojo. Check out the Motivators Assessment. Reach out to Framework Leadership or to Lance, and we'll hook you up and we'll take you through and your team through the Motivators Assessment and the FindMojo program. Lance, thanks for being here.
Todd, thank you, man. You're one of the greats on the planet and the greats in my book. So thank you so much.
All right, brother. Take care, man.
We'll see you.
Yeah.